In the bustling city of Leeds, there was a girl named Amelia. She was born into a neighborhood where opportunity rarely knocked. Her father worked as a taxi driver, and her mother stitched clothes at home to keep food on the table. Amelia grew up surrounded by sirens, broken windows, and neighbors who told her, "People like us never make it out." But Amelia had something that set her apart, an unshakable belief in education. From a young age, she loved books more than anything. While her friends played outside, Amelia sat in the local library, lost in worlds created by authors she admired. To her, books were not just stories, they were passports to a better life. Yet, her journey was never smooth. At 12, her grades began to slip. Teachers told her she wasn't university material. Classmates mocked her ambition. "Oxford? Cambridge? Don't be ridiculous," they sneered. Amelia went home crying, but she refused to give up. She made a promise to herself, "I will prove them wrong." At 15, tragedy struck. Her father was diagnosed with a chronic illness, forcing him to stop working. The family's fragile income collapsed overnight. Amelia started working part-time at a cafe after school, often returning home past midnight. Exhausted, she would sit at her desk and push through her studies. She whispered to herself, "One day this pain will become my power." Her first big setback came during her A-levels. Despite months of effort, she failed 2 subjects. It felt like the end of her dream. For weeks, she couldn't face her books. But then she remembered her mother's words. Failure is not falling down. Failure is refusing to get up. With renewed determination, she resat her exams and passed with flying colors. That small victory reignited her fire. At 18, Amelia applied to top universities. Rejection letters poured in Oxford, Cambridge, and several more. Each letter felt like a punch in the stomach. Her friends celebrated their offers, while Amelia sat alone, staring at her rejection pile. But instead of giving up, she chose a different path. She enrolled in a local university, telling herself, "It doesn't matter where I start. It matters how far I go." University life was brutal. Surrounded by students from privileged backgrounds, Amelia often felt out of place. She couldn't afford expensive textbooks or new clothes. She worked 2 part-time jobs while studying, often surviving on little sleep. Yet she refused to break. Her secret weapon was persistence. She studied harder than anyone else, attended every lecture, asked every question. Slowly, her professors began to notice her determination. By her final year, Amelia had transformed. She graduated with top honors, earning awards for academic excellence. Her success wasn't just in grades, it was in proving that resilience could outshine privilege. After graduation, Amelia faced another mountain: finding a job. She sent out hundreds of applications and faced rejection after rejection. Not enough experience, employers said. But Amelia knew rejection wasn't the end. She volunteered, interned, and built her skills tirelessly. Finally, a non-profit organization offered her a position. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the beginning of her career. Over the years, Amelia rose through the ranks. She became known for her tireless work ethic and her ability to inspire those around her. She led projects that provided education to disadvantaged children, reminding them that their background did not define their future. Her story spread, and soon she was invited to speak at schools, conferences, and even international events. On stage, she often said, "I was once told I wasn't good enough. I was once told my dreams were too big. But I stand here today because I refuse to listen. If I can rise, so can you." Her words resonated because they were born of truth, not theory. Amelia also founded a scholarship program for underprivileged students. She didn't just want to succeed, she wanted to create ladders for others to climb. Hundreds of young people who once thought education was out of reach found new hope through her foundation. Years later, Amelia returned to her old school. The same halls where she once felt invisible now echoed with applause as she shared her story. She looked into the eyes of students who sat where she once sat and told them, "Don't let anyone write your story for you. Pick up the pen. Write your own ending." Her journey from a struggling teenager in Leeds to a respected leader on the world stage became a beacon of hope. She proved that resilience can rewrite destiny, that failure can fuel success, and that no dream is too big for a determined heart. And so, Amelia's life became more than just her own. It became a message for millions. Your background is not your boundary. Your struggle is not your sentence. Your persistence is your power. The girl once dismissed as not good enough became the woman who taught the world that you are never defined by where you start, but by how fiercely you refuse to stop. In a quiet town on the outskirts of Manchester, there lived a boy named Daniel. He wasn't born into wealth, fame, or opportunity. His father worked long hours in a factory, and his mother cleaned houses to keep the family afloat. Daniel was the middle child in a family of 5, often overlooked, often forgotten. As a child, he struggled to find his voice. He wasn't the smartest in his class, nor was he the fastest on the football pitch. Teachers labeled him average. Classmates teased him for being shy and awkward. He carried those labels like heavy chains, believing that maybe he truly was destined to be invisible. But deep down, Daniel had one secret weapon: curiosity. He was fascinated by how things worked. Old radios, broken clocks, discarded electronics, he collected them all, tinkering late into the night with tools borrowed from neighbors. When something finally came back to life in his hands, he felt powerful, like he could bring order out of chaos. Life, however, wasn't generous. At the age of 13, his father lost his job at the factory. The family sank into poverty. Bills piled up, cupboards emptied, and the house grew colder each winter. Daniel took on odd jobs, delivering newspapers, stacking shelves, cleaning cars. Every pound he earned went straight into keeping the lights on. Childhood was stolen from him, but responsibility gave him resilience. One of Daniel's lowest moments came when his classmates mocked his worn-out shoes and second-hand clothes. He went home humiliated, tears streaming down his face. That night, his mother held him and said, "Son, the world will always try to measure your worth by what you wear, what you own, or where you come from. Don't let them. Your worth lies in what you build, in what you give, and in how far you are willing to go." Those words became his anchor. At 16, Daniel applied for an apprenticeship at a small local workshop. The owner laughed at him. "You're just a kid. You'll never last a week." But Daniel begged for a chance, offering to work for free just to learn. The owner reluctantly agreed. Within months, Daniel outworked everyone. He stayed late, studied manuals, asked endless questions. Soon, the same man who doubted him said, "You got something, lad, don't waste it." Despite his growth, Daniel still faced rejection after rejection when applying for university. His grades weren't perfect, and his background didn't impress admissions officers. But instead of quitting, he found another way. He enrolled in night classes while continuing his apprenticeship. Every day, he juggled long shifts at the workshop, hours of study, and the fatigue of survival. He failed multiple times, failed exams, failed projects, failed interviews. Each failure cut him deeply. Yet he learned to see failure not as the end, but as a teacher. Failure is proof you tried, he reminded himself. With each setback, he adapted, improved, and came back stronger. At 21, Daniel finally earned his engineering qualification. It wasn't from a world-famous university, but it was his ticket to a better life. He secured a junior role at a tech company in London. The city was intimidating, filled with people who seemed smarter, richer, and more confident. For months, Daniel felt like an imposter. But instead of shrinking, he leaned on the lesson his mother taught him: worth is not given, it is proven. He worked tirelessly, often the first to arrive and the last to leave. His innovative ideas began to catch attention. When others saw problems, Daniel saw possibilities. Slowly, he rose through the ranks. By 28, he led a team. By 30, he had designed products that transformed industries. But Daniel's true success wasn't just professional. He never forgot his roots. He used his earnings to lift his family out of poverty, ensuring his siblings could pursue education without fear. He returned to his town, funding scholarships for kids who grew up in the same streets where dreams once felt impossible. One day, Daniel was invited to speak at an international conference. Standing on that grand stage, in front of thousands, he looked back on the boy who once felt invisible. He took a deep breath and said, "I wasn't born extraordinary. I wasn't given a silver spoon. I was told I was average, unremarkable, forgettable. But here's the truth. You don't need to be born extraordinary. You make yourself extraordinary through persistence, resilience, and belief. If I can rise, so can you." His words electrified the audience because they weren't polished lines from a textbook. They were lived, raw, and real. Years later, Daniel became a global innovator, but he carried himself with humility. When people asked him what his secret was, he always replied, "I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the fastest. I was just the one who refused to quit." Daniel's life proved a timeless truth. Greatness doesn't come from privilege, talent, or luck. It comes from relentless effort, from the courage to keep walking when the road is dark, and from the strength to turn wounds into wisdom. The boy once called average became the man who redefined excellence, not just for himself, but for everyone who dared to believe that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. There was once a girl named Amelia, born in a small coastal town in the south of England. The town was beautiful with its salty breeze and endless horizon, but it was also a place where dreams rarely took flight. Most people there worked in fishing, tourism, or small shops. Life was predictable, and ambition often drowned in routine. Amelia grew up in a modest home with peeling paint on the walls and a roof that leaked every winter. Her father was a fisherman who battled storms at sea, and her mother worked as a seamstress, stitching clothes until her fingers bled. Money was always scarce. Arguments about bills filled the kitchen, and Amelia often went to bed listening to the sound of her parents' weary sighs. From an early age, Amelia felt different. While her friends were content playing on the beach, she would sit with a notebook, scribbling stories, drawing sketches, or staring at the waves, wondering what lay beyond the horizon. She dreamed of a bigger world, a place where she could use her voice and creativity to inspire change. But whenever she spoke about her dreams, people laughed. "You're just a fisherman's daughter," they said. "No one from here ever makes it out." Those words stung, but Amelia carried them like fuel in her veins. School was another battlefield. She wasn't the brightest student in math or science, but she had a gift for speaking and writing. Teachers noticed her talent, but often dismissed it as impractical. Classmates mocked her accent and her tattered clothes. Still, Amelia clung to one belief: "My circumstances are not my destiny." At 15, her father's boat was destroyed in a storm. Overnight, the family plunged deeper into poverty. Amelia started working evenings at a local cafe, cleaning tables and washing dishes. She would come home exhausted, but still write late into the night, filling notebooks with ideas and speeches. One evening, while cleaning the cafe, she overheard two businessmen discussing a seminar in London. She learned that speakers there inspired crowds and earned respect for their words. A spark lit inside her. She wanted to be that person, the one who lit fires in others. But London felt like another planet. She had no money for travel, no connections, and no clear path. Still, she refused to let the dream die. She began practicing in front of a cracked mirror, speaking aloud to her reflection as if it were an audience. At first, her voice trembled, her sentences stumbled, but day by day, she grew stronger, more confident. When she turned 18, Amelia made a bold choice. She saved every tip from the cafe and bought a one-way bus ticket to London. Her mother wept, fearing for her safety, while her father silently handed her a small compass, saying, "Wherever you go, let this remind you to never lose your direction." London was overwhelming. The skyscrapers, the endless rush of people, the cold indifference, it swallowed her whole. She slept in hostels, sometimes skipped meals, and spent her days handing out flyers for events just to survive. But she never lost sight of her dream. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, a small community center needed a last-minute replacement speaker. A volunteer she knew recommended her. Amelia stood in front of a tiny audience of 20 people, her hands shaking, knees weak. But as soon as she began speaking, something shifted. She poured her heart into her words, sharing her story of struggle, resilience, and hope. The room fell silent. People listened, eyes glistening, hearts stirred. When she finished, they applauded, not out of politeness, but out of genuine connection. That night, Amelia realized she had found her calling. Words spread slowly. She spoke at more community events, then at schools, then at conferences. Each time her audience grew. Each time her voice grew stronger. Soon, she was invited to international forums, where she stood alongside world leaders and change makers. But Amelia never let fame corrupt her. She remembered the girl who cleaned cafe tables, the girl mocked for dreaming. Whenever she spoke, she carried that girl with her, reminding audiences that greatness is born not from privilege, but from persistence. One of her most powerful speeches was delivered at a youth summit in New York. Standing on stage with thousands watching, she said, I was told I was just a fisherman's daughter, that no one from my town could ever rise. But I stand here as proof that where you start is not where you must stay. Your background does not define your ceiling. Only your belief, your work, and your refusal to give up can do that. The crowd erupted in applause, not because the words were fancy, but because they were real. Years later, Amelia founded an organization to mentor young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. She poured her success back into others, ensuring no child felt as trapped as she once did. Her legacy wasn't just speeches, it was lives transformed, dreams reignited, and hope restored. When asked how she achieved it all, she would smile and say, "I never waited for permission. I never accepted the limits others placed on me. I simply chose to believe that my story mattered, and so does yours." Amelia's life became a living testament to the truth that no matter how small your beginnings, no matter how many doubts surround you, your voice, your dream, and your courage can reshape the world.